now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. A pair of squatters allegedly murdered a woman inside of her Manhattan apartment and allegedly stuffed her in a duffel bag.
We begin tonight with this. A woman police believes was killed by squatters in New York City. Her body stuffed in a duffel bag, and the case has been traced back here to central Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us at 10 o'clock. I'm Jasmine Brooks. So here's a quick look at all of this. It started in New York City, moving to Lower Paxton Township where the crash happened, and it ended this morning in York County. Hallie Jacobs has been following this story for us, and she has the very latest.
We're at the spot on Jonestown Road where the suspects were found after a police car saw them crash their car. Now, for some perspective, they were traveling in a Lexus on the westbound lane when they were trying to make a right-hand turn, crashing into a Chevy Tahoe. According to court documents obtained by CBS 21, initially the driver of the Lexus involved in the crash gave a fake name and said she was a resident of York County. It was later revealed that the vehicle belonged to the victim, 52-year-old Nadia Vitels. The two suspects in the car, 19-year-old Haley Tejada and 18-year-old Kensley Alston, were then arrested this morning in York by U.S. Marshals. They have not been charged in connection with Nadia's murder. Police have only named them persons of interest.
She was so excited to move into the city.
This is video of Nadia from 2021 when she was interviewed by CBS New York. Nadia Vitels had just returned from Spain to her mother's empty apartment in New York City. It had been vacant for months after the death of her mother. Police say Nadia's body was discovered on March 14th, hidden in a duffel bag in a closet. Family members entered the apartment and found her body when they couldn't reach her.
The male in-law pointed to the closet. He said he believed that there's a body in that bag. And all the clothes were down. So you really couldn't see it on the bag. You see partially a little bit.
New York City investigators believe Nadia encountered the suspects, possibly squatting in her mother's empty apartment. They say surveillance footage captured Haley and Kensley leaving Nadia's apartment on the day of her murder. Her death, ruled a homicide due to blunt force trauma, has left her family devastated.
You will continue to be my role model. You showed me what it's like to be an incredible child, the perfect parent, a loyal, warm best friend.
Haley and Kensley have both been extradited back to Dauphin County, where they're facing charges in connection with the stolen vehicle. Reporting for CBS 21 News, I'm Hallie Jacobs.
Now, in this alleged incident that took place in March, 52-year-old Nadia Vittel had come to New York from Spain to take care of the affairs of her late mother, who passed away. Now, as Nadia Vittel came to New York from Spain, she was looking to try to deal with the final affairs of her mother as related to her apartment on the 19th floor of 206 East 31st Street. And as she was looking to try to get this apartment ready for another relative to take over, she was confronted by two squatters, Hallie Tejada and Kensley Alston, who were both 19 and 18 years old. And on being confronted by Nadia Vittel, these two squatters, Hallie Tejada and Kensley Alston, allegedly beat 52-year-old Nadia Vittel to death. And after beating her to death, they then put her body inside of a duffel bag and stuffed it inside of a closet. And after stuffing her body inside of this closet, they continued to live in the residence at this apartment on 206 East 31st Street until a wellness check was done by her son. And I believe that was what caused these two kids to panic. And as they panicked, they basically stole Nadia Vittel's Lexus and then drove her Lexus through New Jersey into Pennsylvania, and they were tracked through the credit cards of Nadia Vittel. And as they were tracked by these credit cards after crashing the Lexus, eventually law enforcement wound up capturing these two individuals and charging them with the alleged murder of Nadia Vittel. Now, the NYPD sees the alleged murder of Nadia Vittel as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the alleged behavior of Hallie Tejada and Kensley Alston, it fits the pattern and profile of children of the corn that I talk about in my book, The Woman Crisis. And in that chapter of The Woman Crisis, I talk about how children become children of the corn due to the way they are raised in feminist indoctrinated society. And because they are raised in a dysfunctional fashion in feminist indoctrinated society, boys and girls don't get the life skills or survival skills that they need, scaffolded and structured by a mother and a father. And sadly, what happens to these children is because they don't get any sort of scaffolding by a father establishing structure for those children and establishing order for those children, and a mother not nurturing those children, what happens to those children is that they grow up like wild stalks. And as they grow up like wild stalks, they wind up growing up with no sense of understanding about rules and order in society, and they grow up with no real understanding of how life works in the world. And these children of the corn basically wind up running wild because they have no respect for authority, they have no respect for people, and they have no regard for other people's rights because they were never taught how to respect authority or other people's rights. And in the case of Hallie Tejada and Kenny Alston, they basically wound up growing up running wild, and this wild couple basically came to New York, basically running these streets, and because they had no respect for people's property or property rights, they wound up running up into this building in 206 East 31st Street, and they thought that they could just go and reside in somebody else's apartment without ever having to follow the protocol and procedures of going out and looking to rent an apartment by signing a lease. No, because these two children of the corn basically were not taught about how to function in society, they wound up thinking that they had a right to go into this apartment and just stay there. And that's because these two children of the corn didn't want to go to the Department of Homeless Services, which in New York would have given them housing, because all the migrants are getting housing and many homeless individuals are getting housing. But with them being near the age of a minor, people would have been looking at them and looking at their family situation. And I guess that's what they didn't want people to do, be contacting their family, because these children of the corn, they wanted to go out here and live their own lives without being under the authority of parents. Now, with this whole situation, I'm thinking things are quite suspect, because as I'm listening to this story and I see where the story is taking place at 206 East 31st Street in Midtown Manhattan, in this area of Manhattan called Kips Bay. Now, this is a higher end area of Manhattan, and I'm wondering if these two squatters basically got help from someone inside of that building, because that building was a security building, and with that building being a security building in Midtown Manhattan, I'm wondering if somebody basically wound up helping these kids by enabling them to stay in that apartment, because usually when it comes to those buildings in that area, and I've been living in New York for all my life, usually the people are gonna be noticing something suspect as related to a 18-year-old and a 19-year-old in these apartments. And I would have thought that somebody would have called the police as related to them being in that apartment early on, because usually with white folks in that area, they would have seen these two individuals and seen they're just walking around and thought something was suspect. But that's, again, where I start to see a red flag for this story as related to somebody in this building possibly enabling these children of the corn to participate in this delinquent behavior. I believe that these two children of the corn definitely did get some help from someone. This is my observation, not in any reports, but this is my observation. I believe that they got some help to be able to get into this building with security at the door, because usually in these buildings you need to have a key fob to get into the building, one, and two, people would have to know who you were. So for these children to come into this building with keys and be able to come in and out of this building, they had to have had somebody in that building give them some sort of hand, because usually with kids like this, they basically are running away because they don't want to submit to the authority of their parents. And usually they want to go out here and say that they're on their own. They want to go out here and be on their own as related to possibly being in love with each other, because this is that teenage love, I believe, was a part of this story. And as they were in this teenage love, they were thinking, oh, they're going to go out here and stay in this apartment, possibly begged and pleaded somebody saying that they needed a place to stay. And that's how they possibly wound up in this apartment in one of the higher end areas of Manhattan. And as they wound up in that apartment, they felt entitled to stay in that apartment to the point where they wanted to continue staying in that apartment. And as they ran into Nadia Vittel, what they did was attack Nadia Vittel, who confronted them on seeing them in her property. And as they saw them in her property, they attacked her and beat her to death, allegedly. And after they beat her to death, what they did was look to make their world smooth. And as they looked to make their world smooth, what they did was continue to try to live in this apartment as this woman's body was in that apartment. And again, that shows complete malice of forethought as related to the regard of life for this woman. They had no regard for this woman's life. They only wanted to continue to be able to occupy this space because they didn't want to run these streets. And I believe they only wanted to the reason why they wanted to run these streets is because they wanted to stay and have their relationship and be on these streets and be together as related to this dysfunctional relationship that they were having with each other. Now, as they were having this dysfunctional relationship and trying to make their world smooth, I believe what happened was when the son found out his mother was missing, he began to look for his mother. And as he looked for his mother and brought the police with him, this is what made these two wind up panicking. And as they panicked, they basically wound up looking to go on the run. And as they looked to go on the run, they took her Lexus and drove across the Hudson River into New Jersey and eventually arrived in Pennsylvania, where they crashed and ditched Nadia Vittel's Lexus. And after they crashed Nadia Vittel's Lexus, what they did was go out here with these credit cards looking to go on the run, and they left a whole trail as related to their crimes, basically creating a whole trail as related to their crimes that any critical thinking prosecutor could follow. And eventually they wound up arresting this 18-year-old and 19-year-old, and this 18 and 19-year-old are now going to go from being homeless and on the streets to winding up in a place worse than the streets ever were. And that place is right now Rikers Island. And if they are tried and convicted, they are going to go to a place even worse than the streets, which is the penitentiary. And inside the penitentiary, yes, they will have a permanent residence if they are given life in prison, which they are possibly going to get for these murders. And in that place, they're going to find a place worse than anything they could experience as related to teenage love, because they're going to have to deal with the individuals inside of the penitentiary, such as, I believe, Kinsley Alston, the 18-year-old, is going to be dealing with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. And as he's in that penitentiary for this, if he is convicted, he's going to be dealing with all of those big hulking men, and those big hulking men are going to show him some love as they trade him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, off-brand fruit punch, off-brand grape drink, off-brand orange drink, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand vanilla wafers, off-brand ginger snaps, off-brand sugar wafers, Fritos chips, Kit Kat candy bars, snack pack puddings, Snyder's pretzels, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies. I mean, they're going to be trading him for all of the commissary as he's basically spit roasted and turned out by these Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. And Mr. Sprinkles, after they turn out the front side and the back side, Mr. Sprinkles will come in and finish the entire event with spraying special sauce all over dude's face, and front side and back side, and split the cheeks open and show the backside looking like the inside of the glazed donut. And this female will basically be dealing with Betty, Martha, Bertha, and Ms. Ice Cream, and again, getting turned out for spades games as they're trading commissary. I mean, these two are basically seeing, they were thought they would go on the run and live on the streets, but now they're going to be living a horror story in the penitentiary. And this is the sad, tragic fate that happens to children of the corn. And it happens to children of the corn because there's no family unit for these children. And because there's no family unit, what happens is these children don't know how to function, and they don't know how to function, and they try to go out and live on the streets. And sadly, as they live on the streets, they have to deal with the consequences of the streets. And this whole situation is a really troubling one because it's part of a disturbing trend I'm seeing with both the man crisis and the woman crisis. And the disturbing trend I'm seeing with both the man crisis and the woman crisis is that these perpetrators are getting younger and younger. And the reason why they are getting younger and younger is because the family unit here in America has deteriorated to the point where it's on the point of collapse, and because parents are more focused on working jobs instead of parenting children, and with these children not getting any sort of guidance or any sort of knowledge as related to how to function in life, they are becoming dysfunctional. And that's what I see with this tragic situation. This situation where a woman was looking to close out her mother's affairs led to her losing her life. And that's what's sad about it, is that these children of the corn basically made it where a woman who was looking to deal with her mother's death wound up dying herself, all because we don't really teach children how to regard human life or regard people's personal property or respect other people. And it's all because mom and dad are too busy working jobs to be able to take care of family affairs. I mean, America is in a really bad place because we're not only seeing an increase in frequency of this kind of violence, what we're also seeing is that these perpetrators are getting younger and younger, and they're getting younger and younger because the family here in America is just falling apart because corporate America doesn't want to change the way we work in this country, because what they want to do is have a group of consumers, and they want that group of consumers to just be out here working all day and shopping all night, but not taking time for the family. And without a family, you're not going to have a society, because if your perpetrators are getting younger and younger, you not only have a man and woman crisis that America doesn't want to acknowledge, we have a societal crisis because we're in a place where the society is on the brink of teetering to collapse. Because if we don't teach children to respect other people and respect other people's property, then you're going to have more of these in situations. Now, some are saying that this was a major situation as related to squatters, and I will agree with it. Yes, it's a major situation as related to squatters, but the big problem here with these squatters is that they feel entitled to other people's property because they have not been taught to respect the authority of adults. They haven't been taught to respect the property of adults. They have not been taught to respect the space of other people. And because they're not taught these basic life skills at an early age, these children grow up like stalks to become children of the corn. And as they become children of the corn, it becomes all about them. And as it becomes all about them, they learn not to regard other people. And this is the direct result of raising kids for the last 50 years under failed feminist ideals, where they thought, oh, we don't need a parent in the home to raise children because women are so-called being oppressed. And because they said women were being oppressed, they felt, oh, we don't need to raise children with a mother. No, mom can go out and work and the children can grow up in daycare. But what we're seeing from these kids who are growing up in daycare is that they're growing up to become children of the corn, because a child needs a mother at home to bond with them. And as the child bonds with the mother, they learn somebody cares about them. And as they learn somebody cares about them, they learn to care about other people. Moreover, they learn to care about other people's property, and they learn to respect other people. That's what was important about having a mother in the home, to go out here and be the child's first teacher. And it was also important for the father to be there, to be the one who provided structure and order for those children, to learn how to respect authority and learn how to respect elders, because what these two children of the corn did was disrespectful to this 52-year-old elder. I mean, they had no regard for her life at all, and that was all due to the dysfunctional way they have been raised in our dysfunctional society, which was supposed to, under the feminists, supposed to give us kinder, gentler, softer people. But it doesn't look like these people are kinder, gentler, or softer. It looks like they're colder and crueler. And it looks like they're colder and crueler because these two children of the corn, as I see it, had no regard for this woman's life, no regard for this woman's property, no regard for this woman's personal space. I mean, this was the home of her mother, and she came here to deal with her mother's affairs, and sadly wound up losing her life, and lost her life all because these two children of the corn basically went out here and wreaked havoc. Now, what's really sad about this whole situation is this woman lost her life, but what's even worse is that we've got more and more of these children of the corn out here, and these children of the corn are like 3 to 4 generations on top of the 2 to 3 generations of beta males we've got out here. So America is in a dire situation America doesn't want to acknowledge, because it doesn't want to upset all of those feminist indoctrinated women that they have in the job market. They don't want to upset all of those feminist indoctrinated women by holding them accountable for the failed way they raised their children, because in the case of these two children of the corn, the parents failed in this situation to raise healthy children because they were in this teenage love. And as they were in this teenage love, they had no love for anybody else. It was all about them, and it was all about them and their narcissism. And in their narcissism, they wound up taking the life of a woman and taking her apartment, again squatting and having no regard for the law, because it was all about what they wanted. And sadly, we're going to see a lot more of these situations because America refuses to acknowledge the way we've raised children these days is not creating healthy men and women. No, what we're creating are a bunch of men and women in crisis who are making life miserable for everyone out here as they participate in these heinous and violent crimes. Now, if you want to learn how children become children of the corn, you can pick up my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com. And in those books, I explain how we got in this dysfunctional situation 60 years ago and how we can break out of this situation and stop raising children of the corn and start raising children to become healthy adults. And you can find both The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis on paperback and Kindle format at Amazon.com, and you can find it at other online booksellers in digital format, such as Google Play, the iBookstore, and Barnes & Noble's Nook, and you can also find it in paperback at Barnes & Noble and other booksellers and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. Now, if you'd like to see me make more videos about The Man Crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Now available for the first time in paperback. Stop Simping in the Workplace. Men, learn what you need to know in order to protect your job from workplace predators with Stop Simping in the Workplace. Available in paperback at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.